Simply get.
We are live.
We are live. This was Senate Finance on March 14th. And starting out with more testimony on 181. And then later in the day, we will discuss and see if we come to a final draft. I apologize in advance. I didn't get to eat lunch. So I will try and be quiet and finish my sandwich. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. Good afternoon. I'm Claire Buckley from the NI Public Affairs, and I'm here today on behalf of CTIA, the Wireless Association, to offer some amendments to the proposed televisions/streaming tax. We all have those, do we?
It's up on the committee page and I printed out
Committee.
one for
Okay.
people who want to print stuff.
That is the summary. I submitted two documents to the committee, a summary of the amendments and the actual amendments, which is like a 10-page document, amending the draft 2.1, which is the draft.
Okay,
Yeah,
exactly what
Yep.
you want to accomplish.
Yep.
here.
and I'm happy to go
Okay,
over
and
that.
then we can go through the exact wording.
Yeah, okay. So our goal is to ensure that mobile telecommunications companies are exempt from the tax. And the gross receipts definition in draft 2.1 is very broad. And it says that it means, and this is a quote, all consideration by any kind or nature. And it does exclude mobile telecommunications service and internet access. However, wireless providers also sell other goods and services such as phones, accessories, and insurance for damage and loss. And so without a carve out, these non-telecom, non-internet receipts could be subject to the 5% gross receipts tax. And
But
then
that's only for streaming services, so why would it be looking at other people's gross receipts?
well, the concern is that the definition of gross receipts is so broad that it could unintentionally capture some of these
Okay,
other, and the exemption in the bill right now is only for mobile telecommunication service and internet access. So we actually have some proposed amendments to just make it clear that wireless is exempt. And I'm happy to quickly go through those amendments if that would be helpful.
okay. You can go through them. Is Kirby gonna come down?
I haven't asked him to, I can.
Okay, see if he can come now and, or if he would at least be here when we go to the vote, because we've got a bunch of amendments, and I know he has a new draft.
Would it be possible, Zane, to put up the draft change from Kirby on the committee page? I can't for the life of me find it anyway.
The
Yes.
one that was on there for the day before we left for town meeting break was the incorrect draft. So I believe that was corrected last night because amendments were coming out that were based on the draft that was up there, and it was not the correct one, because I was operating under assumptions that weren't in that. Okay.
Okay. So, I'll say that the first, there's basically 5 proposals in our amendments. And, the first one, in various places on page 2 through 5, we propose to strike provision, delivery, distribution, and furnishing, so that those definitions only reference distribution or broadcasting as applicable. And the rationale for this is, the intent is to make sure that the companies that provide the conduit for streaming, but not the streaming service itself, are not inadvertently subject to the tax.
Okay. I'm looking for draft, pages 2 through 5.
And I had draft 2.2, that was the draft that was, I'm sorry.
I've got 2.1. up
I'm
here.
sorry, 2.1 is the draft. Yep,
So we're looking at the same pages and move on. Page 2 through 5.
And in various places on 2, 2, 3, 5, and there's also a document that I submitted, which is the actual amendments. And it's version 2.1 with the actual amendments in it.
Okay, I'm not finding any of that. So that's what he sent me last night. Okay, those are just the fine, right? Delivery, okay, there's imposed an assessment on the provision, delivery, or furnishing of video television, that's,
Right.
okay. I don't know where that is on this, I found it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
This is another strike off. Okay, so you just want a provision, you want delivery taking out of there and furnishing?
And provision and distribution, wherever those are referenced, and
So
just have,
what do you call?
just have
streaming services?
distribution or broadcasting.
Okay.
And that would, like I said, that would make sure that like wireless is the conduit for streaming, we're not the actual streamers, and so that would just make clear that we wouldn't be inadvertently subject to the tax. So the next amendment,
But on that,
yes,
so I'm reading your statement, I appreciate both the language and the summary, but you say various places on 235 propose to strike provision, delivery, distribution, and furnishing, so that the definitions reference only distribution and or broadcasting, but, so you're saying to strike distribution, but then to only reference distribution.
right, I guess that would be an error.
Okay, so distribution and broadcasting is okay, but the provision, delivery,
applicable.
and furnishing.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, I got it.
And there are places, in the actual language that we'd like to offer is in the amendment, exactly where those changes would be made. And then on the second amendment is page 3, line 10. We'd like an exclusion for charges for mobile telecommunication services from the gross receipts definition. Both Maine and Massachusetts, draft Massachusetts exclude wireless services from the tax, since really wireless providers should not be paying a television assessment. So that would be another exclusion, just to make crystal clear that telecommunications companies are exempt from the tax. And the third proposal is along the same lines. We'd like on page 4, line 20, to insert an exclusion for commercial mobile service providers and internet service providers from the definition of video streaming service provider. And that, so wireless service and internet services are not streaming services, and so the definition should be clear that they're not. And finally, I have 2 technical amendments. One is on page 5, line 14, and it would strike language prohibiting service providers from imposing a surcharge on customer bills. And there are cases that found similar language is unconstitutional.
We have been looking at that,
Okay,
I know Kirby is tightening up the language, she's been in contact with legal.
Yeah.
Counsel, and we're trying to tighten it, well, we basically don't want companies, streaming companies, it has nothing to do with wireless. To say is the state of Vermont is taxing you, because we aren't taxing the consumer, we are taxing the receipts of the company. They can raise their rates, they can say Vermont is gonna cause us to raise their rates, but you can't put a $10 surcharge on the bottom and say that's Vermont's gross receipts tax or Vermont tax.
okay.
But
Well, I
I
say,
think we could do away with that altogether and it would make any difference.
and we would definitely agree that we'd like to have that language stricken, and I put 2 cases here that similar language was found unconstitutional, a restraint on commercial speech in other states.
And one of the lobbyists is trying to find the citations so that we
Okay.
can look at them. If you know the citations, then you know what we're looking at.
The citations are right in the document that I handed out to you today.
Great.
Two of them at least. I mean, there might be more, but there's 2 there. One relates to Kentucky and one was actually New York, US Supreme Court case. That came out of
You
New
sent
York.
this document to
I
Zane.
did, yeah.
Okay, so then Zane, you could share that with Kirby and
Yep,
tell him we're gonna want to talk about
I'll let him know
that.
what's up on the
Yeah.
page.
Perfect.
And we
Um,
can, yeah, he will redo that.
And finally, our final proposal is just on page 10 to strike the retroactive effective date and make the tax effective 1/1/25.
Okay. Got that last night, I got an answer. If we want to start collecting the money in January, then it has to be on this year's receipts. So if we have to start it a year in advance, because we won't collect it for a year. You take some. At least that was, and I know we've done that with tax bills before, they have to be in effect for a certain amount of time before there's money to collect. But we will double check that, he's got this, so.
Yeah, okay. I'm happy to walk through the amendments like in the hard copy, but you know, those are the amendments that we would like to the bill. And, you know, really thank you for considering them and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I can't walk through the bill right now because we don't have the latest draft,
Okay,
so it's hard to say,
The newest one is up on the committee page.
it is, okay, it wasn't,
That's the question.
yes.
So if I get the overall intent of all of your changes is to make sure that, or to carve out and ensure that AT&T, Verizon, wireless providers are not considered a streamer of content and that they would not be caught or be taxed as such. Is that
correct.
Okay.
As long as, if they start providing streaming services, as of today, they don't. If they decide I can stream movie, Verizon is going to have a program, I can stream movies on my phone, then they're streaming, but just having me load Netflix on my iPad, it's not Verizon or whoever's providing the service here that's doing the streaming, it's the company that's getting paid for the streaming.
But if AT&T provided as bundled services, Disney Plus or Netflix as part of what they're charging for their services, it would be expected that that is part of what they're selling? Or would this exclude in those bundled services? Because I have seen those before where like AT&T is offering a year or Netflix bundled with their monthly services. You would still expect that to be included in the tax. Is that correct?
Well, I think that whoever was offering the streaming services would pay the tax, but I don't have an answer. I don't want to misspeak on bundled services specifically. So I'm happy to get an answer for you on this.
Right now, that's not happening.
But right now, we're not, I mean, we are the conduit for the streaming, but not the streaming service itself, and that's why we're asking.
I suppose Verizon could offer as an incentive to buy their next $800 phone, you'll get a year's free access to Netflix. I don't know what, and well, there's no money changing hands, there's no revenue, so there's nothing to add. Okay, we're gonna have to move on.
Just flip notes version in the interest of time. The kinds of activities that you say would not be taxed, the kinds of activities that it's okay to tax. Could you just describe the differences again? What is it? Just the whole class of activities that should be taxed.
Well, what I'm saying is that wireless services or internet access services should not be taxed as part of this bill. Because that is just a conduit for the streaming service to use. Like if I watched Disney Plus on my cell phone, Disney Plus would be paying, you know, I would be paying the gross receipts tax, not
Not your Verizon or
my carrier of the cell phone.
if you buy something over the phone,
Yeah,
Verizon doesn't get taxed for that. I get taxed to pay whomever I bought it from over the phone. Verizon is like the highway. And streaming goes over the highway. We may tax whatever's on that highway when it gets to where it's going, but we don't tax the highway.
As far as the traffic, you might pay tolls variable based on the types of traffic they have.
And we never intended to tax the high. Media conveyance methods.
But referring to it as the highway, that is a figure of speech, is it now?
Yes, it is.
It's a metaphor.
Mhm.
What we really got here is a computer company. It's selling stuff on your screen.
Well, we actually have poles and wires. We are not doing satellite because they aren't doing poles and wires. They are taxing them yet, we have tried, and they're franchise fees. And now people are buying a service. And we are putting a tax on that service.
I know we're running short of time. These are not rhetorical questions. I actually don't understand why. I do understand the difference. I don't understand why, because of that difference, one should be taxed and the other should not. You know, and I know, I used to make fun of my mother because she had no idea what the transmission was. She just knew to get in the car to drive it. But I turn on my computer and stuff shows up on the screen. That's all I really say, you know. How it got there is up to them.
Okay, but this is a thing that you specifically sign up for. You give them your credit card number, and I have Netflix. So my grandsons could watch Thomas the Tank Train when they came over. Netflix takes, I'm not sure what they're up to now, but I'm doing the cost benefit on maintaining them. And they take it out of my bank account, I think, it goes on my pay, but they bill me every month for the service of being able to put Netflix on my phone. There are others, there's something my son attached to the side of my computer that lets me get other things for free. I'm not sure what that is, but, this is, you don't just get this, it's not like Smart Moves that has come on the last two tablets that I've bought. It's, you sign up and you pay for it, and I believe you pay, for a movie. Maybe you just get, maybe you just get access for X amount a month. But I think some of them you pay per movie, but it's not accidental. Your credit card gets involved.
I won't take up any marketing time.
We're gonna have Kirby. He's still here at 2:10, but, we're gonna try and get some,
Thank you.
thank you. We're moving things around. This is, we crossover, and so things are not in an actually logical order because a lot of it is depending on when people can be here and when staff can be here, and Ted is here. And I've got, Ted, I've got you left, I've got Cassie Palamas, is Cassie?
I'm here.
You're here, come on up. This is the miscellaneous ag. And a large portion of it is changes to the farm loan program. And ag seemed to say, well, you asked for it, so they put it in. And somebody moved my book.
That is correct.
And so we'll not really look at it.
Inviting my colleague, Sarah Isham, who is our expert on ag lending. Vida's Director of Agricultural
I think
Lending.
last time we were doing it, you were spreading it out, spread out the farm foreclosures. And the last time I dealt with farm lending, it was farms were in really serious trouble.
Okay, hopefully that was.
That was a number of years ago.
So I know that I don't have a lot of time on the agenda, so well, for the record,
You can take what you need.
are we on, for the record, Cassie Salinas, CEO of Vida?
Eric Nystrom, Director of Agricultural Lending at Vida.
So I can take this a couple different ways. I did share a PowerPoint presentation which provides you background information on Vida's
Can you
agriculture.
share that on the screen? That way, people who are watching at home can see what we're looking at.
Pull it up. So Zach, I need to open the Zoom meeting, is that correct?
Yeah, I sent you the invite link, just click on it and it should pretty much do the rest.
Okay.
I can't open it.
So I'm, yeah, whoops, hold on. I'm happy to,
So here.
Yeah, she
Mute yourself and turn your speaker off.
Leave your alarm.
better. The PowerPoint is background information on ag lending. I am happy to share that, but you can also stop me at any point and say, oh, you need to get to the meat of today's presentation. Sorry about all those screens there.
Okay, I think just background for why you're making the changes and, you know, what they will accomplish.
Share this consent. I don't want to present.
Want to share?
No, I already am, oh. You're not seeing my screen, are you?
Yeah.
You know, in the interest of time, do you mind, you got it, right?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, I think this.
And it might help. This is a new committee. I don't think we've even had you, maybe
You haven't.
once, but I don't think we've
Yeah.
had you in here. So just for folks that
Sure.
are new, just a little, what does Vita do?
So, and you'll see this in a minute. VITA is an instrumentality of the state. We are same type of entity as VHFA or VSAP. So we're created under state statute. Within VITA, we have two main lines of business. We have agricultural lending and we have commercial or everything non-agricultural. So we are a lender. We lend for the purpose of promoting economic development in the state, which includes agriculture as one of our economic development engines. You can go to the next slide. So as I say, within VITA, we have this nonprofit entity called Vermont Agricultural Credit Corporation. And it was created, so VITA is about 50 years old. VAC is about 25 years old. However, there was a predecessor entity to that. So we've been doing agricultural loans for a long, long time. Our main sort of bread and butter on the agricultural side when it first was established was dairy farming. Dairy farming is huge in Vermont. So a big thrust on helping small to medium-sized dairy farms, which kind of were not, there wasn't enough access to capital for that size in the dairy farming industry. The larger ones, there's more access to capital.
And
So
part of what
that's,
you do is to help businesses and farms with loans that would not be really viable or available to them on the general market.
correct. We do, I mean, just to clarify, we don't have any kind of but-for in our statute. So it's not that we don't have to make a but-for statement that says this business or this farm would go out of business if it weren't for our financing. But our mission is to provide access to lower cost capital. So lower being a relative term. It doesn't mean that it's below market rates. It means that for the risk of that particular business or farm, it's lower cost than might be available elsewhere. We do that by borrowing money from other larger institutions, the capital markets. So Vita borrows money and relends it. And so we mark it up a little bit so that we cover our overhead. And that's the basic model of how we fund ourselves and what we do. It's a little bit different between commercial and agricultural lending, kind of nuanced differences. Commercial has maybe 20 different loan programs. Agriculture has about 3, and it's, buying a farm, owning a farm, buying equipment, owning equipment, or providing working capital type of financing. And okay, we can, sorry, I've kind of skipped ahead here. So this is what Vita's sort of hierarchy looks like. We've got the instrumentality, and within that, we've got not only that, but a couple of other smaller nonprofit entities. Keep going, please. All right, so agricultural loans represent about 1/3 of Vita's overall portfolio. So you can see it's a huge part of what we do. It's a huge part of the mission of Vita. You can skip ahead. So within agriculture, dairy represents about 40% of all our agricultural loans. That is significant. However, it is also down quite a bit. It's been going down over the years, and it reflects generally what's going on in the dairy industry with consolidations, large farms buying up smaller and medium-sized farms, smaller and medium-sized farms going out of business. However, we are, meeting the needs of other diversified ag sectors. So it could be dairy farmers that are going into maple or adding on other sort of value-added type of businesses. So you can see here we've got crop farming, non-dairy production would be things like poultry, goats. We've got maple, and then a smattering of others, say berries and orchards and that sort of things. Next, please. This also reflects sort of consistent with what I just said. Because dairy is such a huge part of what we do on the ag sector, you can see that there's been a general sort of decline in the amount of loans that we have originated over since 2019. And that is reflective of the decline in dairy. Next, please. This, I won't spend a lot of time in, but it goes into detail of what we've closed by sector over the past 5 years. So you can see that dairy during the past 5 years still represents the largest component in our ag portfolio as far as what we're originating. Maple is increasing. We've got a bit in the apple orchards. Everything else is relatively small, but kind of a nice mix here, very diversified. Next, please. Okay, so what have we done over the years? We've got, as I say, these are our main loan programs: farm ownership loans, farm operating loans, and ag energy loans. So we do have a portfolio of ag borrowers where we have finance digesters or solar panels. Next, please. Additionally, we've had some one-time special loan programs where we have used state money. And generally when we get state money, it's used for 2 purposes: loan loss reserves or interest subsidy. So we have had a couple of folk programs, which is farm
I
operating
think
loans.
the 2009 is the time frame I was thinking
Yeah,
of.
yeah.
We just had a tremendous number of farms going under.
Yep, and that was a pretty large program, $1 million with state help. We leveraged that to $7.2 million in loans to help 125 farms. In 2010, we had another $1 million for the debt stabilization program, which we used to subsidize interest rates again and loan loss reserves. And again, you can see that state money is leveraged quite a bit. So in that case, it turned into $45.4 million loans of 213 farms. Next slide, please. In 2016, we had a small organic dairy transition loan program to help some dairy farms transition away from conventional to organic.
But organic was making a lot more.
At that point in time, didn't last forever. Then we had a second full program, much smaller in 2018, when again, milk prices kind of dropped significantly. Next slide, please. And then otherwise, we have also, and this did not involve state money, the SBA PPP program. We, in addition to our, small business, commercial businesses, we helped many ag borrowers access federal funds during that time. And then last year, we did a forgivable loan program. Again, it was for commercial as well as ag. So it's nice to see that 48 farms could benefit from that additional forgivable loan program. That was a sort of after the PPP money was all gone, there was still an unmet need out there, and the state actually appropriated $18 million for VITA
Money, I'm sure.
What's that?
I said of federal money, I'm sure.
Yes, that came, initially it was federal, came through ACCD and VITA put the money out.
That's interesting because VITA is talking about a forgivable loan program. And I know there's some backstop money for you.
Right.
I just hadn't heard that there was a history of doing those. That's interesting.
Well, it's a recent history.
Yeah.
Starting with, I think you can look to the success of the PPP program that got that started. And I was actually very pleasantly surprised at the successor state program and how we were able to put $18.5 million out in a relatively short period of time. And in that case, it was for the businesses that fell through the cracks with the federal program. So the federal program, the SBA PPP, had very stringent criteria as to when the business needs had been started, how long they had been in business, what sector they're in, so on and so forth. And there were a lot of businesses that say started just before the pandemic, couldn't get it, or started during, or there were many stories that made a good case for how the pandemic impacted the business, but they weren't able to access the federal money. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's my very quick overview of VITA's agricultural lending program. I'm happy to take any questions at this point on kind of our background, or we can dive into what's on the table here.
I think unless there's any questions about the background, it's just good to know why the changes are being proposed.
Yeah, no, thank you for letting me run through that, albeit quickly.
It's good for us to know who you are and what you do before we start making changes.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Okay, so changes. As I said earlier, that Vermont Agricultural Credit Corporation was created about 25 years ago. Since that time, there have not been any real significant changes to statute. We did add the energy program, but as far as eligibility criteria and definitions, things that really impact what we can do, not much has changed in those 25 years. But as you saw, the industry has changed. Dairy is changing and we're becoming more diversified. We have different players in the market. And so it is time for us to be able to meet unmet needs of the current or today's agricultural environment. Okay, so actually, Ledge Counsel, Michael O'Grady, did a good job of providing a summary that I think is on the website as well. I can run through, but in general, what we're asking for is to expand eligibility to farmers owning 20% or greater of the farming operation. Right now, the language reads that to be eligible, it has to be owned by its majority, not 20%. So that's a significant change.
51%.
Right, and that has kept some meaningful applicants from being able to access.
Are these things where you may have several businesses that invest, or you may have several family members that co-own the farm? One wants to get a loan and the other three don't?
That's a scenario that could fall into that. You know, another example is, and we've talked about this one in prior testimony, is a vineyard that's up in Chittenden County that is managed and farmed by farmers, but the majority owners are not on there every day and don't fall under that definition of who a farmer
You've got
is.
investors in the,
So you have investors, right?
okay, who own it.
Yeah.
Senator Brockett.
The question, how do you secure a loan like that?
Same way we secure all our loans, we take generally whatever's available, so it's real estate, equipment.
Well, if somebody's
All
a 20%
business
owner of
assets.
a farm, do you take in effect, a position on 20% of the farm?
No,
I would
no,
think.
we would take, so personal guarantees, maybe that is a better way to explain how we would
Mhm.
get that. So anybody who owns a material portion, and we define, well, you'll see that here,
Mhm.
define that as 20% or greater ownership, would need to provide a personal guarantee of the loan. But as far as the collateral, it's the same as any other, what we do every day.
And so your evaluation of the individual is based on that individual's net worth and the percentage of ownership in the farm?
So they provide a personal financial statement, and that personal financial statement would say they own whatever. So they're providing a full unlimited guarantee of the debt.
Mhm.
If they are, that's our default position. You obviously could negotiate something different than that, but generally, all the personal guarantees are full and unlimited. So if somebody owns 20% or more of that business, we will require them to guarantee the loan. And that's a full guarantee of 100% of the debt.
But the amount that is secured and the amount, and I guess that would depend upon your evaluation of creditor. But I would assume that if they own 20% of the business, that is likely, a farm, for example, would be a substantial amount of that person's net worth. And my only question basically is if that person defaults and what's on a personal
If the
guarantee
business
otherwise.
defaults.
The business defaults.
Right.
But the person is only guaranteed his portion of the business or the whole business. That's
The whole-
really what I'm kind of getting at.
The whole loan, So the amount of the debt,
Is the whole load,
Yeah.
but is the farm, is the farm itself subject to, in effect, repossession or foreclosure in the event that that individual 20% owner defaults? Can you go after the farm as opposed to that person's ownership interest in it?
Well,
So-
go ahead, Sarah, maybe.
So it's really the farm is, if it's an entity, it's really the farm that we're making the loan to. And then we have the individual owners or members, whatever, we have them as co-borrowers. But the
What
farm
I
is what we.
thought I understood you say is that a person who is a 20% owner of the farm and that other members who are owners who may be somewhere else may not be on the debt. Now, did I misunderstand? You're loaning it to the
If it's
20%
less
owner.
than 20%.
Yeah,
We may not require them to guarantee the loan because.
well, suppose you have someone who's got a family farm with the 5 brothers,
Mhm.
each of whom own 20%. That person borrows money. What are the obligations of the other owners?
Farm borrows the money.
The farm is,
It really is the farm that's borrowing the money.
Okay,
And it is pledging a primary collateral. So falling back on the individual
that's the second,
is secondary. So the farm would pledge a mortgage or a lien on livestock, machinery and equipment or whatever the assets are that
You're not gonna get 20% of a cow.
Right.
No, we don't want to look at the 20% at all.
You're gonna get 100% of the cow,
Yeah.
if the cow is owned by the business.
Yes, okay.
Well, again, I'm just confused that I don't understand what's happening. Because what I thought I heard was that someone who is a 20% owner now can make a loan. Can get a loan. Now, did I misunderstand that?
That
So
person's
that
not getting
person
along.
is- Right, they're personally guaranteeing.
All right, so you got a personal guarantee by a person who's a 20% owner. But what happens when you said there may be other owners who are out of state or something who don't participate in this? If they own more than 20% themselves, must they participate or not?
Yes, if they own 20% or more,
Okay,
they would need to also participate as a guarantor or alternatively as a co-borrower. That's kind of the decision that's made during the under.
that gets to my question then.
Yeah.
You know, what's the security?
That's,
Security is a farm in its entirety, regardless if only one person who's a 20% owner signs up. They
Yeah.
all have to agree to pledge the farm for the note.
I've
Yes,
got Senator Chittenden next, and then Senator.
I just want to validate the concerns I have, and if you could clarify that all of the owners would have to sign off on this, that makes sense. But if it's just a 20% minority owner that can leverage the asset of the farm that they only own a small portion of, that's concerning from a variety of perspectives.
yeah, no, legally, it's done through the loan documents, so if there's, say, and this doesn't really come up in farming, it might come up on a commercial transaction where you have one owner that's say 20%, a little over 20%, and then a whole bunch of other minority owners. In other words, no one other person owns 20% or greater, okay? So you would get the personal guarantee of that 20% owner, but belonging to the business. And the business assets are all on the line because we're taking all that as security for the loan.
Understood.
My concern persists.
This happens, I mean, with inherited real estate. Where a bunch of grandchildren get grandfathers. And one of them borrows on it. Prevails upon the cousins to back him up on it. He can't pay the loan off, so they're gonna have to pay it off. And basically, he would sell his interest to them. That's,
Yeah, again, I don't know if I follow that exactly, it would depend on. I don't know if you're talking about the situation where it's held in trust or.
no, as a group, you know, it's held
So,
collectively,
They inherited,
jointly, it's held jointly.
The estate has
Yeah,
the farm, and there are 5 inheritors to the state. Normally, you sell the property unless somebody wanted it, then they would have to buy it out. But I think it sounded like when we first started, that one fifth owner of the farm could go get out a loan and put the farm up as collateral. And if he defaults, then the 4 other owners were liable without ever knowing that they had done it. And I think what you're saying is, no, that.
no, because
they would have to.
for us
Yeah, you've done
to
this
take
enough, I think.
collateral, the other owners have to sign
Yeah.
the mortgage and everything.
Yeah.
And because they had signed, okay,
Yes.
then they would have to pay off the debt of the one debtor.
Right, and this, but this,
And
But they wouldn't necessarily have to do a personal guarantee, if I understood.
Correct.
The only personal guarantee is that 20% owner. And so your security is the farm itself. And if the farm itself couldn't satisfy your debt, if you look to somebody else to do it, the only one could be that 20% owner.
Correct.
That is,
but I'm assuming, no, go ahead.
that is an unusual circumstance though, because much more often the, like our borrower, the farmers, they own the farm.
Yeah.
And if they own it personally, they might lease it to the LLC or something.
Okay.
But you don't usually have multiple owners of, say, the real estate who aren't affiliated with the farm, although it can happen. So,
And I'm assuming that these are farm loans. These are not a loan to take a vacation. These are loans to do an improvement to the farm or pay off the farm debt or And so the rest of the owners would have that improvement, as part of the farm.
Yeah, right, it's gotta be a business purpose, and that's covered in the statute, the existing statute. And that is what we do, day in, day out, it's for the purpose of buying or expanding the business.
Farm or forestry, because forestry is also included
Okay,
in what is eligible for our, what we call our agricultural loans.
okay. We're doing forestry next, so it's good to know. I think we got home, we are
Yes.
way behind.
Okay, so we would also like to expand the eligibility to specialized service providers to the agricultural and forestry sector. From time to time, there's a business that is highly specialized for say, large animal veterinarian that needs to go out with a mobile unit to the farm. Can we finance that mobile unit? Or farriers and, other.
Foresters.
Okay.
Eliminate the requirement for the business to be formed in Vermont. This is, sort of random. We don't know why it's in there because often corporations are formed, say, in Delaware, but they do business here in Vermont. So the main thing is that the project, the business, the economic development is here in Vermont, but it could be a business incorporated somewhere else.
Farming is becoming big business.
Yes.
Eliminate the requirement for Vermont residency. This one comes up from time to time as well, because we are, we border, several other states. So sometimes a farmer could have property right on the New Hampshire border, the New York border, and wants to buy a piece of land.
The farmhouse is on
Vermont.
the eastern side of the Connecticut River. He's got a barn there, but the hayfield he wants to buy is on the western side. Okay,
Right,
so the improvement would be the hayfield.
right. And again, our loan would fund that Vermont project, not the New Hampshire one. Modify language related to sourcing of agricultural commodities and forest products from primarily to at least partially produced in the state. And this is something that comes up in the forestry sector quite a bit, where you may have a furniture maker that gets wood from Vermont, but might also get wood from Maine or somewhere else. And right now, the language states primarily in Vermont, and it's very restrictive. It's a regional economy, and so we've been able to help that value added forester, changing the language here, to at least partially would be more reflective of kind of the regional aspect of that sector. Add eligibility for nonprofit organizations. This is not clear right now in statute, so we've taken a very conservative approach and we have not lent to nonprofits, but what we're seeing in today's ag sector is you do have some nonprofits that are, say it's a former farm that is now a, I don't know, it's got maybe some educational programs that are run on it, that sort of thing. We had a great example recently where there was a equine operation in Dorset, nonprofit entity. They in horses that are hurt. I know there's a better term for that, but they rehabilitate horses there.
Okay.
And we couldn't do it because they're a nonprofit.
They couldn't get a line.
Well, we did it through VITA, because through
Okay.
VITA, we can lend to
Right.
nonprofits, so we found a way to work around it, but it would be nice to do that
Yeah.
in back as well. And then, add clarifying language to include farm worker housing and farmer housing. We're doing that now, but again, it's
To make it
not in
clear.
the statute.
And I know there is big push in economic development to make sure that there is decent farm worker housing.
Yeah,
And when
and
people pushed into a single.
we need to be able to continue that.
Okay,
Have I left anything out, Sarah?
I think you've pretty much covered it, Cassie.
Okay, as I say, I think that Michael O'Grady's summary also is in there for you, line by line
So
to show
whoever's
what's
presenting this,
changed.
okay. Thank you, I've got Ted, if we're really messing up your schedule at some point, always just wave at me. So,
No appropriations with this request.
we've got some fee changes, hopefully that's gonna tell us they're de minimis.
I don't wanna give away everything
No,
too
I don't want you to
soon.
give away your punchlines here, but,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Okay, Ted. I cannot keep track of all the licenses that are or are not required and new ones that are, and I hope you can figure it out.
The temp and joint fiscal office, I kind of somewhat figured it out with help from the Agency of Agriculture. Took some outside expertise to get me there to the finish line. I don't know if I need to finish or share my fiscal note. There's not really anything of substance, it's all
Okay.
text. We are showing that due to the various fee changes, this really is a quite minimal revenue impact. For example, information from the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets estimated that additional 4 businesses maybe need the $125 public warehouse license due to proposed changes. There are currently 3 businesses that have a public warehouse license and a milk handler license, and they would only need a milk handler license for the 3. So we're not talking about a lot of.
We're gonna get some wash, you're gonna pick up 3 warehouses, and lose 3 warehouses and someplace. Okay,
Yes, and then
what I thought.
yes, also wanted to note, other provisions don't have a revenue impact. For example, the second generation anticoagulant rodenticide, dealers would switch from a Class B license to a Class A, they're the same fee amount. And then the changes to VAC, Vermont Agricultural Credit Corporation, they don't receive state funds, so it's
Yeah.
not really within our purview, but that's the general run through.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course,
Make quick work of that.
yeah, did my best.
I would like to vote this one out. Even as early as tomorrow. I'm going to need someone to report it. Because tomorrow I get to do the 200-page house cleaning bill. So think about that. We will put it on, let me know if you need any more information before we put it on the vote. Okay, we are going to go back. I think, yes, to 181, and that was discussion and it told Kirby 330. He's got the newest draft, and the newest draft is also up on our website, so it might take a few minutes to read it. And
That 2.2,
yes, 2.2 is the newest. See in my, they tell me that it's just because the Wi-Fi is not good in here, but I have restarted my computer 3 times. And it keeps saying cannot load. I think it may have something to do with my iPad.
So, and I-
Yeah, they tell me. But it's a no. Okay,
When a troubleshot before you turn Wi-Fi off and then back on, that seemed to have helped.
well, that's what I do. Pull it down on, back off, and it comes up.
my answer for everything.
But would you-
Computer, turn it off.
Yeah. But this is 3 times in an hour. Every time I go to load a document.
also have a hammer.
Yeah. Okay.
I had a neighbor who had a PhD in engineering. I had an amplifier that had a buzz. And we got on this thing, what? It's not.
Those of us of a certain age remember TVs where you hit them on the side.
Well, he
And whatever
actually,
that little tube did, it came back.
he had a theory. He said if it's buzzing, something's out of place. If you smack it, you shake it.
Yeah.
And when things are shaken, they eventually come to rest. And there's a slightly better chance it will come to rest where it belongs than come to rest where it doesn't.
Just new. Right.
You know, it's interesting that those vacuum tubes were there. And the largest user in the United States of vacuum tubes a few years ago was the Federal Aviation Establishment. Says something.
Well, rock and roll musicians use vacuum tubes in the day.
You
And when
remember
they-
Julius Cox?
What's that?
Julius was a, TV repairman.
yeah.
Yeah,
I had an old guy, old Vermonter, who was a TV guy, he could fix lights on this.
okay, there has been a request, as we look at this. Again. The streaming companies are looking at this as kind of a foot in the door, so they're asking us to make it as painless as possible to swallow the pill of being taxed. And that, so what you see we've done in here is, we've done it before, it just wasn't on the item that got, well, no, we hadn't done it. Is take out any reference, it goes to the general fund, the original bill has references to the PEG special fund, and they would just like, they don't wanna have any kind of even implied commitment to PEG, it goes to the general fund, which is what approves it as. And it is available for PEG.
Yeah.
Do it, so that's been cleaned up. They want the request to take out the findings, that's a drafting sometime, I mean, we've had findings that go for 3 pages, and then lately, we haven't had much in the way of findings. They've seemed to have fallen out. But you can read them and see if that, we have Claire's requesting, and Kirby has those, to make it even clearer if possible, that we are not charging the wireless server.
Yes. The findings.
It was one of the representatives of the services, just. I didn't think it was necessary, but. Should all the requests stay.
Don't just stay live.
Pardon?
You want to stay live?
Let's stay live, because here's Kirby. Perfect.
Oh, great.
Okay, we're just starting to go through this final version. I think we may have cleaned up some of the concerns in this one. But, and you've gotten Claire's concerns. I have a feeling it may be clearer in this newest draft. But walk us through it and.
Yes, Kirby Keaton Legislative Council, some of the concerns are addressed in this version, but other things remain. Thing, do I have a link?
I am sending it to the center.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns is in number 2. In this section. About, to establish a common with our state now. Under the definition of gross receipts. all considerations of any kind or nature received by a video streaming service provider or an affiliate of such person in connection with the provision, delivery, and furnishing. And I think that the cable that it's going over, the wireless network, that's where they're concerned, that they may be the provision, delivery, or furnishing of video streaming.
Yes, so for one thing, to be clear, before I get into addressing the question, so maybe a little bit. I think that the committee looked at a version of things yesterday that was the House version, so that's my fault. I accidentally sent a wrong document. The House is going over this and you were looking at, Chair Cummings had asked me to adjust things and and you ended up looking at that document. So what we have now is the intended Senate Finance Amendment. And it's removed satellite. So it's only streaming, and then the allocation of revenue going to the general fund is completely different here. It's as the committee had asked. So with that stuff aside, I can get into this question of, if I'm understanding this correctly, based on the materials that I just quickly reviewed, that if there's a mobile carrier that's selling access to streaming service directly to a customer, is that the scenario?
No, I think I have Netflix on my iPad, but the service to my iPad is coming through Verizon. So I hit Netflix. I think if anything that implies that Verizon or whoever's wires or wireless system, that Netflix is coming to my computer. And I think
The way it's written is that the sale of service to a customer is what's included in the gross receipts.
Right.
So there's no customer in that case. Who's your?
well, I
It's
pay for the Verizon.
customers, well, what we mean by customer is any person in Vermont who receives or subscribes to a video streaming service provider and does not further distribute in the ordinary course of business. So in this case, the internet, the company's providing internet, they're not providing a streaming service to that person. And they're also not going to be considered under the definition of a video streaming service provider, and that's who's liable for the tax.
Right.
It's a person who transmits, broadcasts, or otherwise provides video streaming service to customers. Providing a platform to access or providing internet access to access streaming is not the same thing as providing streaming.
I'm looking under gross receipts, and it says, consideration of any kind or nature received by a video streaming service provider or an affiliate of such person in connection with the provision, delivery, or furnishing of video streaming services.
Which, are you looking at subdivision?
I am looking at number 2 on page 2, line 10.
Yes, so all consideration received by a provider, so they would have to meet that definition of provider, I just said. Or an affiliate, in connection with the provision, delivery, furnishing of video streaming service to customers. So there's 3 parts there at least that are. The business has to be a video streaming service provider and meet that definition. It has to be providing, the gross receipts only go to the part that's for video streaming, and then it has to be to customers. And one thing I would note is the definition of customer excludes those who are going to redistribute. So I thought maybe that was the question, would be if there's a streaming service that is like access to a streaming service purchased by the company that sells you your phone. And you're paying your phone company for that service.
Right.
In that case, the way it's written, that service would not go on the gross receipts of say Netflix.
But
It would go on the gross receipts of that phone company that's charging you for the streaming service, and yes, they would be subject to the tax.
that, I think, the question that came up this morning, I think, some discussion was, what if as an inducement to buy the new $800 phone, I got a year's free Netflix. At that point, I'm not paying anything. If Verizon is paying Netflix for that streaming service, that would be the gross receipts of Netflix.
And I think it would matter who the customer's paying, and I'm not
Yeah.
familiar enough to know exactly the ins and outs of how all that works. If the customer is paying, if, let's say after that trial period is over, the customer's paying Netflix,
Then it-
then it goes on Netflix's
Right.
first receipts, and there's, you know, but if afterwards that you're paying your phone provider, then that phone provider is
Right.
selling you streaming services, and they are a customer to Netflix, but they're redistributing it, so that transaction would not go on Netflix's first receipts.
And so right now, they would know that they owe those receipts tax if they chose to do that or set up their own streaming service.
Yes,
Okay,
that's the way it's drafted, things could be reordered and changed if that's not the, taxpayers that was intended. That is how it's written.
this is dealing with the situation as it presently is, which is my phone service or my internet service. Comcast is, if they sell me a package or I can buy a movie from them as part of this streaming service package. But right now, these are separate entities that you buy into, you buy a subscription to. And I think some of them, maybe you buy movies or maybe you don't buy movies. But there's some money that changes hands.
If the internet service provider is the one selling the customer the streaming service,
Right.
then they would be subject to the gross receipts tax. If they're simply providing internet service and the customer then purchases a subscription from, say, Netflix, then that would be Netflix's gross receipt tax, it has nothing to do with the internet provider.
But in the case where they're providing that streaming service as part of the bundle, they would be responsible for gross receipts on the entire service. They would be responsible for carving out what they would classify the cost or the piece of the streaming service of their service offerings would be.
Yes, just for the charges for video streaming services would be part of the gross receipts paying tax, not other charges or income.
Any other questions on this section?
I know it just came to us, so I doubt you've had time to look at it, Kirby, but have you seen what we got from Claire and her 5 points?
Yes, I saw that, and I also saw the reference to the Sixth Circuit First Amendment case.
Yes, and we wanted, we were trying to get a hold of what the cases were. But since you just got them 15 minutes ago, I don't know.
I
It
managed to read it, and have a, surface level knowledge of it, and I really appreciate, the legislature being informed about things that are out there. My take at the moment, and I'd be happy to do a memo or further, research for the committee if it's interested, is that there are some differences here than what was happening with that case. And that was a Sixth Circuit case, which Vermont's not in the Sixth Circuit, just I would note that as well. But, let's look at the language here and.
Good.
Yeah.
I don't sense that in this conversation so far that there's any strong advocacy to keep this language prohibiting service providers from making it clear. So I think I heard you say when you were last year that came from New York. And I love that we started there, but I just to move this forward, I don't feel like this is a fight I personally pick. Providers want to articulate it. It doesn't cause me concern. That's why.
Yeah, if this bill is important enough to get out, I don't know that this is a deal breaker. I don't think we are in the business of breaking First Amendment rights.
What I would just say is, obviously, the committee should do what it wants. just so that you are aware of the potential issue. I believe that this is narrowly written in a way in which it only restricts the company from telling a customer that they are responsible for the tax.
Take a look.
Any other political or commercial speech that goes on a bill is allowed under this language.
Look at the highlighted section.
The highlighted section is tightened up, based on the chair's request. And so what it used to say will not mislead, and now it's more specific, and it says a provider shall not communicate to a customer that the tax is imposed on the customer.
We are not imposing it on.
You know, if the First Amendment were so protective that you aren't allowed to tell people they can't lie to their customers, then, you know, we have
That may
consumer
be worth
protection.
falling on your sword for.
While there's definitely some risk here, I think that this is more tightly done than the Sixth Circuit.
I think that's as
Well,
tight as you could get. The next step would be to jettison. And how risk averse is the committee? Okay. So I'm not hearing any jettison it, so let's keep going.
Okay. Show you the allocation the committee requested previously. Well, I think you looked at this yesterday, so it's probably fresh on your mind that there was an allocation to a special fund, and then from the special fund each year, there would be an allocation to AMOs and to
Yeah.
low income broadband access. It's been changed here in this amendment. It just states that the revenue will be deposited in the general fund, and that the General Assembly will appropriate a portion of the revenue to the Secretary of State to administer and oversee a grant program for Vermont Access Network, which is the AMO organization. This could be not withstood, obviously, so
Anytime.
there's no guarantee that this revenue is allocated in the way that is said here. But that's.
But I
that's
think-
always been-
That came as a request from the general funds. $1 million more than the PEGs actually needed. To give them millions of dollars more when the proposals they're looking at are level funding. Almost all social service agencies, that. The job of the appropriations committee is to make the decision as to what is the highest priority. In times when it's been funded, which until the last 3 years has been regulated. So, okay,
And the only other thing that I would go over is I apologize for not having been around to see all of this, but I gather that there's been some talk about the retroactive effective date. So I just thought I would
Yes.
explain that. The reason this is a retroactive effective date is so that it would apply to this year, 2024, but that would make it so that the tax filing would be done in April 2025. It's done. If it's not retroactive, the first time this tax is paid would be April 2026.
so we wouldn't be getting this money for 2 years. Okay. Questions?
I see the appropriation for 1.1 million, and that I'm just, if I'm the one to present this on the floor, I'm not requesting to do so. If this does move forward, I don't know where that came from. Where did that dollar?
Yeah, where did that come from?
That was, I mentioned that last time I was here. That's the amount that the Department of Taxes has been told by their software vendor that is needed to set up a new tax. And this is considered a small lift for their vendor, and so this is the low end of what the vendor charges.
Okay. Well, maybe for folks to take it out. But yeah, you set up a new tax and fine. And we need to address this something. All right. Committee. I'm just. No, we have the automatic traffic laws. Is the committee ready to vote now, or would you rather let this percolate until tomorrow. This is the one bill we do have to get out by tomorrow. Or are you ready to vote at this point?
I prefer percolate myself.
Okay, I think I'll let it percolate. Let's let Kirby off the hook. We did just get some different information. I'd like to give everybody some time to think about it until we vote. So I'm gonna take us on, and we might actually end up back on schedule. The next one is 184, that is traffic law enforcement. ATLE systems, and there is fee in it. Well, you will be the percent of this one, because you're on the committee. There are 5 of us, I have a form. Senator McDonald, are you ready to take a vote?
Damn.
Dan, you get the,
I'll move the committee approves favorably of the bill.
yeah,
Without amendment,
without amendment,
is that the motion?
I think so.
Senator Gray always does such a good job
He
trying to
does.
fill his shoes, but
Something about other bills that need modifications to get through appropriations. I have no idea what the federal law is.
we move the bill favorably.
That's, yes,
Sound right?
okay.
Sounds good.
I'm waiting for my scribe to catch up.
I
got it printed up.
for just the entire bill.
Bill.
Yeah.
Move we concur.
We concur, yes. We put it on paper for,
And
What draft do we concur with?
there's only,
There's only one on it.
no, that's Hudson.
if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes,
The Senate Transportation discussed her comment yesterday about perpetuity and that we're inclined, we're composing a floor amendment to replace that with what's standard in practice, which is no less than 3 years. So you'll see a floor amendment on that should this go forward.
okay, so you're gonna do that. Okay, so Senator Chitwood has, have we found has anybody got a copy to tell us which draft this is?
Good shape, across the halls of the House building.
This is the Senate bill. It's draft 4.1, but I'm trying to confirm that.
My color. Here we go. It is draft 4.1, because that's the one that was handed out to me. The one we worked on. Draft 1.1, address 184, drafted 3/1/24 at 10:15 a.m. Just
Yes,
a.m. 10,
So it's draft 4.1.
draft 4.1.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Are we ready to vote? Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Those say no. I've got that as 502. I'm gonna start charging. I'm gonna have a quarter job for absence. Okay. We have 5 minutes before we're scheduled to take up Reigate, so, Senator Chin. So we will have something to give the assistant secretary when she comes down. Just, you gotta get the original and sign it. Okay, why don't we take a 5-minute break? Tomorrow committee, there is an automobile insurance bill. I guess at some point judiciary gave authority over automobile insurance. The automobile companies are concerned about the cost. DFR wasn't consulted, so I've asked to have everybody come in and talk to us tomorrow. Senator Sear says he will pass over it. Because it doesn't get us on. We will try to get that out tomorrow. Along the building, S-180 was the only one that wasn't. Okay.
Building.